I just went to see Detective Pikachu, and oh my god, it was really good. And so now here is a brand new Kirblog. All right, the time is nigh. After all this waiting and anticipation, went to go see the movie this past weekend, and don't have actually like a ton to say. So this is actually going to be a little bit of a quick one, but I'll go over all the major points. This is the first career blog in a while where I actually wrote like a little bit of an outline for myself. Overall, really solid. Was not an amazing movie, but it was absolutely a good time, and I would say it certainly does live up to the best video game adaptation movie description, purely because of just how entertaining it was. I've got some good things and some bad things to sort of go over. I'm going to keep the majority of this spoiler-free, and I might, if there's time at the end, I'll go over some spoilery stuff, but we'll see. Another time. Okay, so first of all, visual effects and the animation of the Pokemon, of the creatures themselves, was fantastic. All the trailers that I had checked out, that was one thing in particular that I was just really happy to see, like, just how gorgeous, how like masterfully animated I felt all of the creatures were, because they moved and felt like real animals, but still had the characteriness and like kind of magical fantasticness of the Pokemon creatures themselves. I remember, I think in that interview I did with Mike Hagney last year for Pokecember, I remember we talked about how like a reason that kids really love Pokemon that they won't necessarily say, maybe they can't put into words, but like they wish it was real. And I've been seeing a lot of funny memes of people being like, oh God, never have I wanted Pokemon to be a real thing more than after seeing this movie. And you really do get a little bit of that sensation of just like, they're these cute, adorable, like creatures filled with personality that like you get to have these bonds with and everything, and like they really got that across. I think that the choice creatively of having this Rhyme City location be like a Pokeball free zone, like it's something that is not typical to the way that Pokemon normally is, in the sense of like, you know, you usually have battles happening all the time and you have the characters in their Pokeballs. The fact that they went with something that was atypical for the Pokemon world for this movie lent itself really well to how the story was, with the whole like living alongside each other and everything, and that worked pretty well thematically, I felt, for what they were kind of going for with, you know, with both the mystery of what's going on, leaving that a little ambiguous, and also just the relationship between Tim and Pikachu as well. So acting and the dialogue were a little shaky at times. This might be unfair just because I've gone from, you know, Infinity War to where like there's all these like award-winning, oh my God, actors, like, you know, all over the screen, to not necessarily like, actors that aren't a big deal in their own right. But this was the first time, I think, in a while where like I was kind of, because I don't usually, it's weird, I'm so critical about this with the voiceover, but almost never with live action, where like some of the execution of the acting, like some of the performances and deliveries on certain lines, was kind of like distracting me a little bit and taking me out of it. Because the thing is, I'm such a stickler about dialogue. I know that's no secret about me. I've always kind of been that way for a while. But it was both. There was a lot of like kind of awkwardish moments with the dialogue, and then the way that they would also like deliver it would be a little like, okay. You know, Ryan Reynolds definitely, Lanny Bator said this to Team 4 Star Guys, did their review of the movie a little while ago. Ryan Reynolds' performance definitely carries this movie. Bill Nighy is also in it. He's been announced as playing a character in the movie, which I'll leave the details of out for the time being. But he was also very good. He didn't get like a massive amount of screen time compared to the other characters. But and the weird thing was like Justice Smith and Catherine Newton, who got the most amount of screen time, while their performances didn't like wow me, I still really liked them like as personalities. Like they were really, like the characters of Tim and Lucy like felt cool to me, and I liked them. So I like it, I wasn't like disenjoying following their adventure and like, all these mysteries and everything. And then plus having Pikachu and Psyduck be some fun foils in the way that they interact with them. It made for a good like main character group, I would say. It was interesting also on the note of just like performances, with the kind of half and half of the Pokemon, kind of their sound design being kind of like how the show often is, where they're saying their name as a cry, and then also some of the more like just like creature designy kind of things, like the Bulbasaurs were just kind of like, and then meanwhile you have like and all that on the being kind of more the way you expect them to be. I'm actually on kind of a hunt to find out who some of the voices of the creatures were in the movie, because they list a bunch of people as like additional voices, including a few friends of mine actually. But I don't know like who was Psyduck and who were Snubbull and all the other ones that were like of major significance throughout. So I'd be kind of curious to see, but nonetheless. Yeah, I loved all the fan service. Yeah, and the choices of Pokemon that they included. I was very happy that they did keep it like pretty varied in terms of like the different species, and also the fact that they had a lot of different generations worth. Certainly a lot of Gen 1 creatures in there for the most part, which I understand. But yeah, I was happy to see like some from Diamond and Pearl and Black and White and Ruby and Sapphire, etc. Greninja from X and Y. It was good because that kept it from feeling like too pandery in that sense. Like it was kept open enough that like it could appeal to all fans of Pokemon, and obviously the ones that like are Gen 1 creatures that like are very consistent, like Pikachu and Mewtwo, and otherwise like like everybody knows who they are from whatever walk of Pokemon fan you are. So that made sense. Yeah, all the fan service, the choice of locales as well, like the locations that they used for there's, if you've seen the trailers, just to keep it within that stuff, the laboratory area where some of the crazy Earth stuff happens, which turned out to be a really cool twist. The city and the underground, battle arena kind of thing, and so there were some like interesting like set pieces and all that, and especially in the city having all like the fan servicey kind of like signs that were referencing different Pokemon, and like the posters all around, and they used some pictures to also show other creatures that weren't necessarily like fully in the movie, but like they got to have some little cameos here and there. It was kept things like just it was one of those things that like kept it feeling like it had a lot of love put into it. Like it wasn't just like a cheapo cash grab, like because I feel like that's the type of movie that would have been produced like years and years and years ago, and like the fact that it's because there was an interview with the director Rob Letterman. He was talking about how like they primarily made it for fans of Pokemon and secondarily for people who don't know anything about Pokemon, and it shows. And I think that actually is to this movie's strength, because it's not trying so hard to be like accessible that like it takes away from just it being, what it is. And it definitely captures the spirit of what makes Pokemon interesting and fun and appealing. So I loved that. That was that I really appreciate, just like as a fan. And also like, thematically, like they went for like a message that was interesting and clear. And, that said though, the story had aspects that I think could have been executed a little bit better. From what I understand, it is relatively faithful to the story of the game. Not like 100%. I know that like some of the things that ultimately happen play out differently, and I think that I'll say that the ending of this movie is a little more definitive, like without going into the details of it. Like this could be like completely a standalone one and done kind of thing, and I think that the Detective Pikachu game leaves open for more, although I don't know if they are going to do, maybe with the success of the movie they might do more games in that setting. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. There were some twists. There were two particular like major twists that felt pretty predictable, which wasn't necessarily a huge weakness, but the progression of the plot felt a little meh. There were some things in the second half that I think it went a little like, whoa, okay, like off the walls in terms of just like the pacing and some of the plot devices that they used and everything. But what wasn't bad, nothing that like brought down the experience in any kind of way. And again, like I think that definitely having that like that sense of putting love into it certainly helped with just like offsetting like that aspect I'm not enjoying too much, but I'm so enveloped in the world and like the way that they're pulling everything off. Like the overall execution just kept me engaged. That said, even just with my gripes about some of the story execution aside, I am actually really, really glad, above all else, that they chose to do this story, or rather a story like this, as the first, American Hollywood produced live action Pokemon movie. Because I know that there's been like kind of rumors about like, oh, they might do like, just Red and Blue, the movie, like like that story, which, I'm not necessarily like clamoring for. Like, obviously they've confirmed they're going to be doing a sequel. I don't know if it'll be Detective Pikachu 2 or if it'll be just another live action Pokemon movie, set in the same universe or anything necessarily. But, there's talk of like, oh, they're going to do like a Pokemon cinematic universe type thing or whatever. We'll see. But nonetheless, yeah, for the first outing of this, I was really happy when I first heard that they were going to do specifically Detective Pikachu, because it lent itself much less risk to being a crappy movie. And also, like, even if it ended up being not a good movie, I feel like it would matter less. Like, it would be like less of like a stain on Pokemon necessarily compared to, because like if they did just do like, not even necessarily something with Ash, but just something more like straight up very traditionally like what you would expect a Pokemon movie to be. The fact that like they went with, I guess like something that was really kind of like more on the obscure side of Pokemon, at least to an American audience, I think. With the story of Detective Pikachu, like, that's not like the core thing that I think people think of first and foremost. But yeah, no, I think that this was a wise decision, and I would be interested in more. I don't know like what they would plan next. Again, if they would do like a direct sequel with Tim and all the same characters and everything and expand upon that, or if they would just like, because I guess now I'll get into the spoiler territory at this point. So if you haven't seen the movie, go do it and don't listen to the rest of this. Some of the stuff they talk about, where like the inclusion of Mewtwo, and they mentioned that like he escapes from Kanto 20 years ago. That in and of itself says to me that like, okay, so if say this is a feasible universe where the events of some of the video games and things have happened, then that probably means then say that stuff happened a long time ago. We don't know that for certain. I saw that some people were theorizing that the kid in the opening sequence where they show like these two characters battling is supposed to be Red. I don't necessarily think so, mainly because I found out this is cool. The fact that apparently that is the Japanese dub voice of Tim Goodman, who got to make a live action appearance, which was a cool idea. I think that the fact that like it was like a cameo, like kind of, role in that sense, like kind of like an Easter egg. I think that it was more so just like the outfit is in reference to Red, and that wasn't necessarily like the character. So who knows? And I mean, I'm not like unopen to the idea of them just doing Red and Blue as a movie. But it's just not like the type of like movie I would want to see necessarily, I guess, like compared to other things that they could do that would maybe be a little bit more creative and like out of the box, I guess. But yeah. So, and it was funny because I remember Mike Lucas had a theory about Lucy Stevens possibly being Misty, like undercover, like she was like investigating this whole thing with like the villain characters and all that, and what ultimately leads to the Mewtwo thing and everything, which I think would have been actually kind of cool. Like he also thought that because it might have been like to set up for further stuff, but yeah, Mewtwo in general I actually think was really well utilized in this. First of all, I actually really liked the choice that they went with for how his voice was executed, because he had like the two different actors overlaid on top of each other, which, by the way, I think one of them is in the game Minotaur that I worked on recently. Rina Hoshino, I think her name is. I believe she was the female of the two male and female voices that were like kind of overlaid for Mewtwo, and then hearing, well, not even just hearing, seeing Bill Nighy's voice coming out of the Mewtwo with his body taken over and all that was fitting and also kind of terrifying. But seeing eventually when Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution comes out later on and that whole thing, that's going to be interesting to go from this to that right afterward. But yeah, Mewtwo was, I think, very well utilized, and the final battle on the very like Poke Floats kind of setting with the balloons and all that was pretty cool. I don't know if it was necessarily meant to be like a nod to Smash Brothers or anything, but it was still cool to see that. Yeah, and the usage of the R like smoke Pokemon drug thing that drove them all to this sort of berserk state, like that was a really like kind of unexpectedly mature thing that they went with, like as a part of the story. It was kind of cool to see something like that you don't normally get in any other Pokemon story, really. I mean, like, you know, there's something kind of close to that, but the fact that it was just like treated like a drug in a sense was pretty interesting. Yeah, and you know, it's funny, like as far as the twist with Harry and, you know, being Pikachu, I remember actually, and I think it might have even been KG saying this, like when we did because we did an interview with him last year, which go check that out if you haven't. That made me think of like, I feel like either he or somebody else pointed out the whole thing of like, oh, it's very clear that like Pikachu is meant to be like symbolizing his father, or maybe just actually is his father somehow. And again, I haven't seen the game story in full, so I don't know if necessarily like that was the same place they were going with it, where like actually it's his soul like put in the Pikachu's body or something like that. But even though and again it was executed a little shakily, but the whole like fusing like humans' souls into Pokemon as like the next evolution, and like the villain's whole plan with that and everything like that, I did like that was like trying to bring some sort of logic as to why it happened, and it lent itself well to like the arc of the movie and everything. The bosses, the bad guys' plan and everything was a little like, oh, okay, but it still worked like fine. It was like, okay, you just kind of accept it. Also, the creepy ass Super Ditto was terrifying in a very cool way, but it's massively terrifying to me. There was some scary stuff in this movie, actually. I wonder like how much I would have been potentially like creeped out by this one if I'd seen it as a kid. Like Charizard is like really intimidating. The Gyarados for like 2 seconds is also that moment of Charizard being like, oh no, don't hurt me. Like when the Gyarados evolves, I was like, oh, it's cute. Somehow they went from making Charizard like really legitimately scary to being like, oh, his like eyes are all watery and stuff. It's like, oh, yeah, it was a great time. I'm really happy that they did this, and yeah, it felt really good seeing this movie. I'm glad that like it's being as appreciated as it is by people. You know, regardless of it not being like an absolutely outstanding film, like overall, like I'm glad that it was good. I'm glad that it was a good movie. It was well done. It's being received very well. People are really, really enjoying it, and it's making people actually want more. Like it's been really crazy to see like how much people's minds have changed from, you know, the prospect of them doing the movie to begin with, to the first trailer that we got, and like everybody kind of reacting to the way that the creatures looked and everything, to people kind of growing, and, you know, I'm including myself on this, to people, you know, growing, you know, more and more like, you know, attached and like getting excited about the prospect of the movie and everything. And then, you know, came out, and so far I think it's done really, really well. And I do hope, like I said, I do hope that it leads to more. I don't know if I'm going to get my hopes up for also like something too crazy, like them doing other Nintendo movies and shows or whatever, and doing a whole like, you know, leading up to a Smash Brothers Avengers type situation or something. I'm not going to get my hopes up for that or anything, but you know, and hey, you know what? I mean, with the Mario movie too, I'm at least glad that that's going to be animated and that it is co-exec produced by Miyamoto. I don't have anything to say about the Sonic movie trailer that like the internet hasn't already said, so I'm not even going to make a whole I thought about doing a Kirblog about just that, but I'm just like, there's nothing interesting to add. So, but no, Pikachu turned out really well. I hope all y'all enjoyed it, but that said, in the comments below, this will be spoiler territory. Go ahead and let me know your thoughts on the movie. Other things that I didn't mention that you really liked, any other cameo Pokemon that you thought were great, like the giant, massive island Torterra, which was really cool. Anything that you think could have been done better, any other particular Pokemon stories that you might be interested to see down the line. Yeah, I guess just give me your thoughts. Next weekend will be the update video for Tome RPG, the May update video. Sorry, I delayed it a little bit, later than I intended, but things played out that way. Sorry. Look forward to that. I'm going to be doing some streaming stuff very soon, and then E3 is like right around the corner. I can't even believe that. Otherwise, if you have future Kirblog topic suggestions, leave some in the comments as well, and mayhaps you'll inspire the next one. Or I might do like a general update one at some point soon. Who knows, because I haven't done that in a while. But, yep, thanks a bunch, and gotta catch 'em all.